Now, I don't think I spent probably more time thinking about this than about any other problem in education, and there is no good answer to it. There has to be a balance, and I don't think we've got the right balance at the moment, but I don't know what the right balance looks like. I think it might have something to do with getting schools and teachers to buy in more to the accountability system than they do at the moment. So there was an interesting proposal in the manifesto that the National Association of Head Teachers put together, which talked about moving away from the sort of flat floor targets for all primary schools towards having a personalised target, if you like, that the school agreed with the central government, or if they were a maintained school with a local authority, or perhaps their regional commissioner in the new system. So that they actually had some say in what they were trying to achieve over the next 2 to 3 years. And if the school can get buy-in and the teachers can get buy-in into that, then you maybe will have less of the negative and more of the positive. Equally, that could be a terrible idea. That could just mean loads more bureaucracy and loads of forms, and actually we don't get any improvement in the situation whatsoever. The other sort of thing I think is worth bearing in mind is I suspect that as systems improve, you can move away from you can take your foot a bit off this pedal. So I suspect there's a relationship between how good a system is and how much accountability it needs. And I think we should probably be thinking more about that in the way we create a balance to try and reduce the negative while keeping the positive. But I don't know what that balance is, and I don't think anyone does yet, and I don't think any country has found that right balance yet. So that's why this is my hardest problem in education policy. I think it's basically unsolvable. You'll never get the balance exactly right, but the more you get the balance wrong, the less time there'll be in school for teaching and learning, and the more on 4, 5 and 6 there. So I think it's probably also the most important to solve too, and the area where we need the most, where we need some new thinking really badly. So there's our problems. I'm going to stop talking. If anyone has any thoughts or questions, I'm going to go here first.
What would the other two have been?
I knew someone was going to ask that. I've forgotten what my 5th one was. I know the 4th one was actually going to be about workload, and it was going to. So I pushed it into the one about CPD because I think that you can't expect workload to keep going up and not have huge problems with your system. I mean, we've already got 50% of people leave after within the first 5 years of teaching. So.
Could I offer the 5th?
You can offer the 5th, yes.
Are we teaching children the right things?
Are we teaching children the right things? See, so are we teaching the right things for digital age? Teaching children the right things for digital age is a really interesting question. But for me, is that really a policy problem for government? Because if you move towards a more autonomous system, then that should be for schools to figure out themselves.
I'm slightly obsessed with the fact that we've got all these health challenges facing children in the future, and there's not a single page or word in the new curriculum that starts to address it. The new public health system are not exactly rushing into that area, and while the silos are there, we're going to have this generation of children growing up with a massive health problem, which I think will spill over into causing some of the poorer results on there.
Yes. I suppose I could have had as my 5th whether government should have anything to do with the curriculum, because part of me thinks, well, if the government doesn't have anything to do with the curriculum, then you have no consistency between what's being taught around the country, and children move around a lot, so that can cause you a lot of problems. Equally, having been through a curriculum review, I really don't think government should have anything to do with curriculum, so I have quite mixed views on that one. Maybe at the back. Culpability.
People blame when things don't go quite as well as they want to. And there's no, I mean, it's becoming the head teachers that can really start. It's becoming the jobs are at risk, etc. And then past that, that fear aren't an element of self and it affects them how they treat elements of self.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
You work on that confidence.
Yeah.
Rather than without it. I think you've got a greater chance of.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, it's a really good point. I think that there has to be an element of culpability and accountability, otherwise it has no meaning. But we've gone too far in that direction. Actually, that's why I liked that idea. Yeah.
Is you don't talk and don't share and don't, and this data, that's what's going to happen in schools.
Which I like the idea of, that's why I quite like the idea of schools buying into their own target, because at least then it's a bit more two-way and a bit less, we're just bashing you on the head. But
as someone who was involved in Mango's government at the time of sort of academies policy and curriculum change, what's the sort of reflection on this notion that so much energy has been put into curriculum change at a time when the move is to try and get schools to academise and therefore not need to deliver a national curriculum?
okay, so that's
a bit
so that's question is there a contradiction between having a lot of academies that have freedom over their own curriculum and having a national curriculum at all? I think there is to some extent, obviously, but actually you can argue that having a national curriculum that the assessment system is based around, in practice means that everybody uses it, which makes you wonder whether the academy freedom is a real one or not. But that's why you sort of come back to this problem about accountability.
I just wondered what you classed as the best teachers, what your interpretation of that is.
Best teachers. I don't really have one, I guess. I mean, frankly, I settle for some teachers to go because there's just a teacher shortage in the parts of the country I'm talking about. You just can't get, especially in maths and science, but actually in other subjects as well, you just can't get anybody. I guess by best I mean people who will help those schools improve. I don't have a particular view in my mind of what a good teacher looks like, but I do know what the end result looks like, and that's obviously missing at the moment.
Why don't you scrap the London waiting allowance?
Yeah, I think that I think they probably should scrap the London waiting allowance. I think certainly there should be a shift of money out into other parts of the country, because in South Gloucestershire I think if you're talking about £2,500 for people, you don't Tower Hamlet's talking about £8,000 for people. I mean, it's a massive difference, and yet London is where the top 20 are all from, so there's an argument for that.
Your first one, I can't remember how you worded it, but it struck me that I would probably have as a problem how to create the best teachers, because if you created the best teachers in those areas, then you wouldn't have a problem of trying to attract them.
Which links into the methods of which teachers train.
Yeah.
Because if that's focused into specific in schools, as you say, they are geographically spread and not equal.
I think this is the biggest problem with school direct, actually, is that it's sucking trainees into places that already have a lot of outstanding schools and away from places that don't at the moment. I mean, I think that the problem with creating teachers in those places has Frankenstein. The problem with training teachers in those places is that people leave. You've got huge migration out early, so people go to leave for university if they're going to go to university at 18, and they don't stay in those parts.
I think what I meant was that, these communities that you were talking, it was really interesting actually, the disaffection, and they've been forgotten by, if you, it's grassroots, what you want is teachers from that community who want to make a difference in that community, which is kind of redefining what a teacher is in a way, which is why I think this government's gone wrong a bit. Because if you can redefine what a good teacher is, so when I say create, it's different to what the idea is now, ideologically. Those teachers would grow from those communities to empower those communities. They would be able to teach those children better because they were from there. Because if you suck a teacher from London to go somewhere, one, they don't fit in and they're not going to stay, and they're not going to do those children any good because they're not from that community. They don't have, the understanding of that community.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's not always true. I mean, I think you can get people who move around the country and really become part of that community. But I think making it sustainable does require that you start to get homegrown talent in those places. But that can only come once you started to see the recovery, I think. It's probably how I see it. I'm out of time, I think. So I'm going to stop so you can all get over to the final session. But thank you very much.